did did Dick Hyman say anything? Was he involved in the?
Well, he wasn't. He was. It was that was the month before when Steven was playing the music of Dick Hyman. So he joined the YouTube chat on that concert.
That's so cool. I'm a huge fan of Dick
Yeah.
Hyman. I need to
Oh,
check
he's
that one out.
amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, there was a period of my life where I was collecting like tons of exotica stuff, like records, and I mean everybody. Like I mean I had tons and tons of like I got really into exotica music. And of course he's a huge force in that scene.
Well, he was, yeah, in the
Yeah, for sure.
'60s with all of that. Yeah, he did a little bit of everything.
And the 50s too, right?
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah, probably goes back to the late '50s.
In fact, exotica music is a huge. It's a tons of great exotica music in old movies.
Oh, there is, there is.
Tons,
Yeah.
tons.
Hey everyone, I am Mike Finkel, artistic director of the Dallas Jazz Piano Society. Today, the Oscars always used to be in March for decades and decades. So I thought this would be a great time to talk about music from movies. We're going to talk about some jazz in movies. We're going to talk about general music in movies. Some of you know Jeff Plant as a bass player, composer, but Jeff is also a huge movie fan, and he's got how many movies are on your Excel spreadsheet that
Oh,
you've
geez,
documented? Do you have any idea?
probably around 6,500, maybe.
He has this amazing Excel list that, will you tell them everything that's included or cross-referenced on there?
I mean, it's really I just made this list for myself and my kids someday. Like to remember. Have you ever like watched a movie and then you have no idea if you remembered if it was good or bad, and you're like, I think this is a
Yes.
good movie,
Yeah.
and then you watch the movie and you're like, oh man, that was a terrible. I remember now how terrible that movie was. I just wasted 2 hours of my life. So I kind of made this list to remember what I thought about movies. That's how it started, really. But then it just sort of snowballed into this gigantic list now with thousands of movies on it. And I rate them. Then I put little pictures of each movie. I've spent way too much time over the last 10 doing this, but have a little picture of the movie. Who the actors are, the director. That way, also though, it's really handy. I can filter, like if I just want to see movies by like Alfred Hitchcock or something, I can just put Alfred Hitchcock movies. And then if I just want to look at the movies that were made between this year and this year, I can do that. And it's very helpful. And I'm like, oh, I gave this movie a 2. Oh yeah, that's not. I'm not gonna watch that one.
So do you also have a spot for to mark which movies you own, whether
Yeah,
digital
yeah.
or
I
hard
tell where I
copies?
saw them. Yes, like I said,
Okay.
Blu-ray, DVD, digital, Netflix, Hulu, whatever. Or I don't have it at all. I say, sometimes it says erased.
So I thought Jeff would be a great one to bring in and talk about movies and the music in movies because of his love and interest in both areas.
I do love it. Don't know if I have anything interesting to offer, but
So I don't know if everyone realizes the different ways music can end up in movies. And that you hear about a composer scoring films that creates an original score, whether it's symphonic, whether it's electronic. But then also, there are songs that are written specifically for a film. Sometimes the composer's involved in that, but not always. And then the third way that music ends up in a film is either a director or a music supervisor will play songs, which, if you think of like Tiny Dancer in Almost Famous, or some of the soundtracks of films that come out with pop songs, or Garden State soundtracks, sometimes there's songs that are placed on the album soundtrack that aren't actually in the film. But that's the three ways music can end up in a film. And what did you want to start out talking about as far as jazz and music in films, Jeff?
Um, I mean, where I man, it's your show, man. No, where did you get? Where did you? I'm assuming you're a big movie music buff yourself.
Oh
Like
yeah.
where did you first start getting interested in it?
Well, I mean, it's a couple of things in that my grandfather was an architect for movie theaters in the early 20th
Wow.
century. My dad was a television producer and director. So just in the genes of the family, there's connections to television, film, and then, I mean, my senior year in North Texas, before I graduated, I started writing music for NBC. And I made a living for a decade or more just composing music for TV, for more industrial films and commercials. But those commercials sometimes were shot by guys that were working on major films also. So they ended up almost being 30 or 60-second films, more short
Hmm.
films than commercials.
Yeah, that's cool. Mine, I have no interesting story like that. I just I guess when I was in elementary school, I started buying records like LPs and cassettes of music soundtracks. Like I still have like the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and a lot of John Williams stuff back then. 'Cause that was like the big, he was one of the biggest guys at the time. Jerry Goldsmith, a lot of those types of guys, the big major,
Right.
orchestral score stuff, and I was super into that. So I still have those. Actually, my daughter has them now.
Oh,
She's
really?
like, what's this cassette? What is this thing? Cassettes. I had to give her an old cassette player to
So
show her how to use it.
you didn't have the LPs. You had
I
cassette for
actually
most of those.
I did have some LPs as well. I have LPs. I keep all the LPs are still mine though. I keep the LPs, but
Right.
I felt good giving her the cassettes.
And those cassettes have survived. I mean, if they sat in
Well,
cars for years in time, yeah, they don't
I
always
didn't. I
have a
didn't have.
long
I never
shelf
played them
life.
in cars really. It was all just inside.
Yeah.
They were inside cassettes. But yeah, she still got them. A bunch of them. Some of them are terrible. I kind of just bought every movie I saw. I started buying the soundtrack to it when I was a kid.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I had a job in elementary school already, so I could, that's what I spent my money on.
You had a
Yep.
job in elementaries?
Did I picked up trash at my grandmother was a secretary for a guy that owned like a lot, with a bunch of businesses and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like a commercial real estate guy, and he hired me and my brother to go pick up trash on the lot. But hey, for an elementary school, and you know what? I did that job all the way through high school.
Wow.
And when my
Yeah,
brother
I
went to
mean,
college, I got double the money. So just saying.
my early job didn't last as long as that. I passed out flyers door to door for George McGovern when he was running for
Oh
president.
man. Wow. And that was when you were 27 or 28.
No. I don't think that paid a whole lot either.
Oh, okay. But anyway, that was my intro into and I mean I've always been a musician since I started playing at like 6 or 7. Started taking lessons at 6 or 7.
When I don't know that everyone that knows you as a musician knows you started on violin.
Yeah. Yep. I played violin through college. Yeah,
And
I
you
did.
still have a violin, right?
I still own a violin. I'm a violin owner.
But you don't play.
I haven't played in a long time. Actually, that's not true. I do occasionally play, like if on studio stuff that I'm recording and I need a violin, I will occasionally, if it's very simple and I can redo it over and over, I'll occasionally play the violin
Yeah.
and edit it heavily.
Not like Jonathan Fisher playing cello now that can play
That's
gigs.
that's different, man. So that's a lot easier to go
It
from bass
is.
to cello than to think of violin. I can play. My daughter plays cello, and one time we were at one of their high school, or I mean, not high school, junior high concert things, and they had the parents come in, and they're like, "Now parents try," and it was like this whole thing. And I started playing all this stuff, and all the kids were like, pretty funny.
But you don't even play upright much anymore, do you?
Not that much. I mean, I play it, but not for a long times because it kind of puts too many calluses on my fingers, and I need the fretless sensitivity and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I'll play it for like 2 or 3 songs,
Yeah, that's the big
not for
thing.
2 or 3 hours.
No.
Now my brother Drew Plant, who's in the chat, he does play upright very well.
Oh, really?
In fact, my upright is one of his old uprights. Yeah.
Nice. So before everyone got in here, one thing we were talking about was actual music performances in movies, and sometimes, and we'll look at some of these videos here in a minute. In films like, say, Round Midnight, you've got great musicians that are actually playing what you're hearing. In that case, Dexter Gordon was a speaking character and had a big role in that film. They also had Herbie Hancock, John McLaughlin, other guys playing. One example you brought up, and maybe we'll look at that, was Mo Better Blues. And talk about that side, the actors playing the roles of musicians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you've met Marcelo Barestavoy, right, Mike? Guitarist,
yeah,
Argentinian guitar player. Yeah. So he do you remember the movie The Mexican?
Yes.
I think it was it Brad Pitt maybe? I forget who all was in it.
Yeah.
Pitt.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, Antonio Banderas, I think, was in it.
Okay.
I think so. Anyway, Marcelo, he used to do a lot of. I play with Marcelo, as you know, and he used to do a lot of guitar stuff for movies in LA. Like anytime they would need like a flamenco style guitar sound, or they would have an actor playing, flamenco guitar, they would call Marcelo in, and he would do the part. And so I think it was Cheech Marin was in that movie, I think. And I think I've never actually seen the movie, but I know that Marcelo came in and he had to teach one of the actors like how to fake playing, like to make it look like he was playing flamenco guitar while Marcelo was really playing. But Marcelo was also leading an actual band in the movie, like with that they show, and he says a lot of those parts got cut out, but there's still parts of him in it, and whoever he taught, whichever actor it was that was supposed to be playing flamenco guitar, that he was coaching.
Right. And like in Mo Better Blues, Terrence Blanchard, who did the score, spent a lot of time with Denzel Washington teaching him the fingerings for all the songs, and he nails it, but he also showed him how to take the horn apart and clean it and put it back together the right way, which he did in a major scene in the movie.
Yeah.
And both. And who was the sax player?
Was Branford Marsalis on the recording?
Yeah, Branford's in the recording. Who's the actor?
Oh, Denzel Washington. Oh, it was Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes. And Wesley did the same thing, I think, with Branford, learned the actual fingerings.
Yep.
So let's look at a little bit of that. Oh, I got to put that on.
Are you going to play the actual the theme song?
I think is your clip from the movie, or your clip is from the movie.
That, and which this song is. I mean, I've probably played this song live with at least 5 different groups. Like everybody plays this song.
You and I have played it together live.
Oh, have we? So there we go.
I'm sure.
6 different groups.
Yeah, and this song was written by Spike Lee's father, Bill.
Bill Lee, yeah.
Who also scored the film and did some really beautiful string writing in this film, too.
That's right.
Here we go. And let's mute the ad.
Mike, you don't have YouTube Extreme or whatever it's called.
The YouTube music. There we go. All right, let me stop that. Yeah, and that wasn't even the most involved song those two did. There's some things where the fingerings on the trumpet, he was playing some serious stuff that was fast-moving valve combinations, and the same thing in La La Land. Some of those piano parts were really challenging.
Yeah.
And he had all of that fingering synced up down to play along with that.
Yeah, it is amazing the coaching that actors go through now to when they're supposed to be playing an instrument because there's been like decades of terrible,
Oh,
like just the worst.
yeah.
I saw. What's that? Go ahead.
You go back to the 40s and 50s, they're not even holding the instruments right or in the right
Oh yeah.
hand, or it's.
You know what's funny though is some of the older movies, like some of the 40s, like especially the 40s. Actually, I actually think the 40s had better, like their actors could actually look. They looked more realistic than like the 80s, for instance. Like it just seems like a lot of the movies in the 80s where people are supposed to be playing instruments. Sometimes the main characters are supposed to be playing instruments, and it's obviously like my favorite is there's crazy vibrato and they're just doing this, and there's like vibrato like but you don't hear anything.
I was
And I,
gonna say Rob Lowe and St. Elmo's Fire.
there we go, perfect example. There
And
was some. It was a cellist in a movie. It was who's the guy that plays Snape? His name's in Harry
oh right,
Potter.
yeah.
What's his name? I can't. It's he was in Die Hard. He was Hans Gruber. Everybody's probably screaming it.
Right.
Look,
Thanks, Steve.
okay, I'm looking it up. This is ridiculous.
All right. What I forgot as we were watching that Mo Better Blues clip, we had a real drummer in there. Jeff Tane Watts is the drummer.
That's right. He was. Yep.
Who actually ended up in
Alan Rickman, of course.
Yes.
Alan Rickman. There was a movie where he died and he was
1,000 points team ship.
And he was supposed to be a cellist. It was terrible. Do you ever watch Two Set Violin? Do you know who that is? They have a
No.
YouTube channel. They're these two Australian guys that they both play violin, and they have done all this. Like now they're huge and millions of followers, and they've done these whole series on um, what like tricks that they do in the movies to make it look like people are playing violin, especially violin and stringed instruments, because that's sort of their specialty. But like they'll put oil on the bow, they'll cover the bow with oil so it doesn't actually make any sound, you know. And then and also this is something they do for like American Idol and shows like that, where there is a canned violin on the track that they're playing to, and they're supposed to look like they're playing violin with it. They'll put oil on the bow because it makes no sound. Like you can rub it up and down the strings as much as you want, and it makes no sound at all. So even if you are a violinist, you can have an actually good track that's playing, and no one will ever know the difference, except unless you're a musician. You can obviously tell that they're not playing.
So the other thing, has anyone ever thought about when a composer gets a scene and is deciding what music goes in there? Have you ever looked at the clips where they take the music out?
Oh yeah, yeah, it's great.
And
Great
it's
stuff.
most scenes, even action scenes, just die
Yeah, Star
without
Wars
the
has a bunch
music
of
in
that.
there.
There's a bunch of Star Wars clips online where you can watch the actual scene without John Williams' score in there,
Yeah.
and you hear like people coughing, and so like, yeah, because like it's really hilarious. It's very uncomfortable. Like, you hear footsteps kind of shuffling around, people coughing, and stuff like that.
So let's look at this. The music on this one isn't quite, it's not an action scene. But look at what's going on with this scene without the music, and then I'll go back and play it with the music, and the mood and everything just takes a dramatic change. This is from a film Like Crazy, and it's
Okay.
just the two young kids sitting in their kitchen together. All right, and let's do this. No music. You can add the sound effects, Jeff.
Excuse me. Oh, they don't even have the dialogue in? They have nothing in.
No. Well, I mean, I have the sound muted.
Oh, I see, I see. I got you.
Okay. So, let's look at those 50 seconds with the piece by Patrick O'Halloran called We Move Lightly. And it's really just a simple two-note piece. The pattern, it's a two-note pattern that moves around. Beautiful piece, but it totally changes everything.
This is mine. Very much.
Yeah,
Totally different. And
totally
I
different.
guess the other thing we should say, The sounds of the coffee cup, the footsteps, all of that you heard in
Foley.
there.
It's all
Yeah, it
Foley.
wasn't Foley. It was somebody in a room watching that picture,
Right.
walking around on some sort of surface that kind of matches that.
Mm-hmm.
The coffee cup. There was a
yeah.
minimal dialogue, and they probably did record that live from that scene, but everything else wasn't the sounds of that room.
Yeah. And it's also amazing too that to find out how much dialogue they have to re-record, just lines, specific lines, and they have to match their own lips. I had no idea until I guess about 10 years ago, like how much just regular dialogue is re-recorded because of some reason or another. You
A
know?
lot of times just because of the noise in the surroundings.
Yeah.
Whether it's wind, whether it's the machinery, I mean, it doesn't work, the dialogue that's there.
Right. I mean, there are certain, like just very faintly that little clip you just showed reminded me of like how important, like Kubrick, I feel like Stanley Kubrick was really good at creating atmospheric, like getting composers and like figuring out, how he wanted the music to work in specific scenes with very simplistic stuff. Like that piece just had, it's pretty simple, like just a piano little line. He would do, I mean, there was lots of movies I feel like where he had those kind of elements in there. But it specifically reminded me of who was it? It was Ligeti. They used Ligeti in Eyes Wide Shut, where it was just like one note, one or two notes. I mean, that one may be in the list actually. It probably is. But like where they would,
I think so.
yeah, to create this crazy. Oh, it's not in there.
No, I think I remember seeing Ligeti. Let's see.
Yeah, it's just like to create this crazy tension. And if you watch that scene,
Yeah.
like,
Well, I see. Oh, there, Ligeti. Do you want to take a look at that?
sure. I don't know if it's this actual scene though or just the music.
Okay, let me get through the commercial. Yeah, the other thing along those lines in Albert Brooks' movie Modern Love, he works on films, and they're trying to find these footsteps for this scene, and whatever footsteps they're on the spaceship, the footsteps they had recorded for that did not work at all.
Okay.
Apparently, they had been working on the Incredible Hulk somewhere before that, so they put in the Hulk footsteps along with the Hulk grunting. They said, "That's it. Now that works," which reminded me of back recording commercials, and we're doing Kern's Nectars and their peach nectar.
Okay.
And they wanted the sound of a peach. And we had one of us went out there and bit into a peach, which sounds like nothing.
Disgusting. No.
So then we went, and I think we got like an apple or a coconut or different things, and we bit into like an apple or coconut, and they go, now that sounds like a peach. And sometimes what you see in the film and what it sounds like are not at all what that
Right.
sound actually is in real life.
Everything too in the movies has to be to like an extreme. It has to be some sort of crazy accentuated, sound. So what we're used to hearing is this really subdued subtleties, and that's not what people want. I mean, that's not what you want if you want to notice something,
Yeah, if you want that sound effect to pop out in the scene, it's got to be exaggerated in some form.
Right.
All right, let's take a look at Ligeti, which hopefully...
This is great for like building tension. The way Kubrick always built tension in a lot of his movies. The music was awesome.
Yeah, well, and he would have scored things, and then he would have classical pieces. Like I think of that in Barry Lyndon also.
Oh, you know what? This may not be the example I was thinking of, but this is also great for another reason.
Okay.
Oh no, this is it. Yeah. The scene they have there doesn't match
Right.
It's like nothing, right?
Right.
But man, like if you see the actual scene with this, the
So,
tension this
okay,
is.
what's going on in that scene? I'm not.
Well,
I
so this is actually sort of a reoccurring theme that they use in the movie, and it's when Tom Cruise, his character, is finding out that like everyone is in on this conspiracy except him, basically, and he's losing. He's finds out his whole life is sort of disintegrating, like little pieces of it are falling apart, and he's this is disappearing, this is disappearing, this it's all being controlled by these sort of this organization which he's not a part of, right? Kind of like the Illuminati sort of vibe.
right.
And the more he finds out, he's like trying to check this out, and that's the music they always use for that. Like that's sort of the theme of his like just this tense, like this tension of your life is starting to fall apart, and you're trying to fix it, and but it's so great because it's so simple and just like it reminded me that the one you played with just that little
Yeah.
piano, one piano, that's it, that's all there is. Where that movie also had some amazing like there's a lot of great composers actually used in that movie, a lot of Kubrick stuff really, that The Shining too had great stuff for building tension, but and it's all used very differently, but like it's not all simple like that, but that Ligeti piece is pretty, I thought, pretty powerful.
Right. And so, well, there's the things like that there's pieces that weren't part of the score that they pulled in, but become such iconic parts of the film. Right now,
Yes.
I'm gonna play. It's funny we were talking about Kubrick. This is a different version of also Sprach Zarathustra.
Is this from Clockwork
This
Orange?
this is the Deodata version of that. I'm just gonna play the original and see if anyone knows the film, because it's a really well-known film scene that ended up using this. So I'll play part of the song and then I'll go to the film clip after that. Okay. Does anyone know the film clip that used this for a guy that was born in a house, lived in this house his entire life, and then the old man that he worked for died, and he had to, probably around 50 years old, leave the house and walk into Washington, D.C. for the first time he's ever left the house? Steve Ship, do you know this one?
I just showed this film to my kids last year.
Oh, what did they think?
They liked it. They thought it was pretty funny.
I went senior year in high school, took a date to this movie, and it's probably not a good high school date movie.
It's pretty cerebral for like a high school date, I would think.
Yeah, it remains one of my favorite movies.
It's a great one.
All right, so let me go back there. From the movie Being There, the first time Chauncey
Writing's
Gardner
not that easy, but
leaves the house. Yeah, okay, enough Grammarly. We go on. Chauncey Gardner leaves the house for the first time ever. All right.
It's almost, that clip is hard. Out of context, it's not as powerful. You know what I mean? Especially if someone hasn't seen the movie, they don't understand the lead up to it. But it's great. It's a great scene.
That works so well.
So speaking of, like, we were talking about Kubrick, right? And we're talking about used music, like music that the composer didn't compose in a movie. Another sort of, I guess, a fourth type of music that's used in movies is something that's composed by someone else, but completely messed up like that. Like that wasn't really composed by Deodato, or however you pronounce his name.
Right.
And so speaking of Kubrick, Clockwork Orange is famous for having stuff like that. You know, how they would take classical pieces and electrify them. You know, make them really weird. I
Well,
think
yeah,
one example,
Wendy Carlos or Walter at the time.
right? Yep, he became a woman later. That's true. He was a bassist, as a matter of fact. I think there's an example of one of those in the list.
Yeah, you have Ode to Joy.
Yeah. So this is, it's Beethoven. What would you call it? Electrified,
Yeah, it's Beethoven
Mogified.
on the Moog. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, let me get back here.
but also
Sure,
pretty iconic though, really, because
it
like
is.
that music. Anyone that's seen Clockwork Orange and hears that song,
Knows knows the relation of the song to the story.
right?
And the vocoder.
Yes. So one thing I do want to say here too is like you know the movie music in general, right? Like in the beginning, movie music was pretty much orchestral. It was pretty much all orchestral, and that was the classic movie music, which is great. And some of those composers are some of my favorite movie composers now. But it really kind of started with the exotica movement. I feel like where they started introducing things, like Nino Nardini and Les Baxter was a big one, and
Right.
like but they started taking stuff that they weren't familiar with, even though it wasn't very authentic. Like they might start taking exotic drums or whatever, or a drum or an instrument from a different country, and they would start using it with their orchestral stuff, and it was kind of like a slow ramp up. And then in the 70s, in the 60s, they started using just more popular music and stuff like that. But one thing that it always fascinates me is when they still have this essence of orchestral compositions, but they use the weirdest like instrumentation, or they're experimenting a lot. Like I feel like Danny Elfman is a great example of that now, because he or at least when he started. Now he's almost getting a little more classical in his compositions. But like when he started, he was super experimental, using tons of weird stuff, and you know I love that stuff too. And there's still guys today. Like, are you familiar with John Bryan, the composer?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So he is a guy that I love. He'll do these orchestral compositions, but then he'll have like a mandolin playing the melody.
Right. Well, like Lady Bird had all sorts of different instruments in that score, as
Yeah.
do a lot of his thing. I mean, Magnolia and
Yeah.
Huckabees and
Step Brothers.
yeah.
He did the music for Step Brothers, and he used Chris Thile with the orchestra. It's like, what?
Wow.
That's it's so cool. I love that. I love that kind of stuff too.
It's fun talking about different instruments. It's funny, and I didn't pull up this clip, and I don't know why I didn't. The Third Man.
Okay.
They didn't.
Orson Welles?
Yeah, they didn't. The entire score got changed because of a band that was playing in the bar there where they were filming, because it was typical. Where did they film? Romania. Wherever they filmed,
Yeah.
they went into the bar and there was this guy playing the zither.
And they just fell in love with it?
And they thought, well, this is perfect. We need to make this the focus of the theme.
Oh,
and
that's
it
cool.
works unbelievable. It's
Oh,
such a
that's really
unique
cool.
sound.
I
But
did not
that
know
wasn't
that.
the idea going into that film at all.
Wow, I'm gonna have to rewatch that with that in mind. I didn't know that.
And then the other side of that, scoring for a film can totally change a musician. And a lot, probably French films for a while, late 50s, early 60s, incorporated a lot more jazz than other films did, and more authentic. They'd bring in Art Blakey to do a score. Michel Legrand was
Right.
very jazz influenced in his early films.
Yep.
Miles Davis for the film Elevator to the Gallows was brought in. He'd never scored a film. He was at that point starting to work with ideas of modal music. And let me play a piece and see if you recognize what this led to. So he went in, watched this film. They had a group of French musicians there. He gave them really basic, minimal score, like one chord. He said, play this D minor chord. And he might tell them where to start or stop or even cue them. And he improvised his part.
Yeah, it's great, man.
No dialogue. One chord. And you have all sorts of ideas from that mood. What's going... You don't know the storyline, but just in that 1 minute, you can have a pretty good sense of what's going on in her head.
Yeah.
Immediately after that film score, a year or two later, that led to what he did on Kind of Blue, the album. The whole idea of the songs being built around modes.
That was the impetus of that, huh?
Yeah.
That was the beginning of that.
That
Wow.
whole score led to Kind of Blue.
The greatest jazz album of all time, according to...
Best-selling. Yeah. A lot of people do think it's the greatest.
Yeah, I definitely think it's one of the greatest, for sure.
It is. It's up there.
I saw... there was a film that Dizzy Gillespie improvised the music for that I saw one time. I'm trying... Do you know what film that is? I'm trying to remember...
No, I don't remember what that
And
is.
he was very old at the time too, so it wasn't a black and white film. And now I can't. The film was terrible, which is why I don't remember the title. I'd have to look at my list. I'd have to look at my Excel sheet to see what it was. But yeah, I remember.
Couldn't be too late because they filmed a documentary on him with an interview at the studio I was at in New York.
Yeah.
And he fell asleep in the middle of the interview. They're just talking to him, and all of a sudden, Dizzy's out.
Yeah, yeah, that's too bad.
which is better than the Jocko educational video that they also recorded at that studio, because several of those days Jocko never showed up.
Yeah, even a sadder story.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jocko's was self-inflicted. Dizzy's was,
Just
mostly age.
old age.
Old age. Yeah, I think another. I actually saw a Robert Redford movie from late '70s recently called The Hot Rock, which is not one of his big famous movies or anything. But it reminded me when I saw the credits, because I always watch the credits just to be
Yeah.
interested in it. And I on the credits they showed, which they used to do this a lot more. Now, of course, they would never do something like this, except in a movie like Birdman or something. But like they listed all the musicians that played, and it was like Chuck Rainey, Carol Kay, Jerry Mulligan was on there. All these, like, I think Ray Brown, because they either had straight ahead jazz or they had like this kind of funky '70s jazz stuff. And they listed every musician in the credits, like after the actors. I was going, man,
And
those
that's
guys.
unusual. Most of the time they're not listed.
No, heck no, man. No one knows who they are. Like I said, an exception today would be like Birdman, where the whole
Well, and that's
soundtrack is Brian
yeah,
Blade playing drums.
is that why you have that clip?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, just because that is really different. I mean, that's a talk about movie music. I can't think of another movie where maybe a couple movies actually where there's just one instrument playing the entire time, like improvising, and that's the score, because that's what Birdman is. It's Brian
Right.
Blade, right? It's Brian Blade playing drums just throughout the whole movie. He never stops. In
Right.
fact,
And sometimes he's in there.
right. I was going to say they break the fourth wall, right? And sometimes they turn a corner and he's there playing drums, and then they leave somewhere else.
And it's interesting approach that he's playing in there too.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
I
really
mean, there's
talk about
big
building tension.
yeah, there's big chunks of Paris, Texas that are just dobro, but not certainly the whole time. That's not the
Right.
only thing in that score.
Well, and there are movies that just have piano. There are
There
movies that just
are.
have piano for a score. And Ry Cooder, I feel like a lot of his movie compositions had that sort of element to it, where it'd just be maybe him playing on a, like a slide kind of soundy thing. But that's a melodic instrument. To just have a non-melodic instrument like drums just play
That's
through the whole movies, that's pretty what's the word? I mean, that's pretty risky, really. It's like,
it is. It is. Let's see that the clip you put, is it from the actual movie or is it just a still image? Do you know?
I don't know. I knew it was going to be hard to find movie clips because they're all copyrighted. So I didn't know.
Right. Let me just screen the first part of that and see, because it doesn't work as well if it's not in the
Right,
context of
sure.
that
It's
film.
just a drummer playing by himself. No one wants to hear
No,
that.
yeah, no, it's just the artwork.
Okay.
Okay, so that doesn't. But everyone should. Well, I hate to recommend that film because it doesn't work for everybody. I liked it a lot, but
There's a lot of tension in that movie. If you don't like tension,
yeah,
and I mean, if having the entire soundtrack be one drummer just soloing the entire time, that should tell you right there if you're gonna enjoy the movie or if it's just gonna drive you
and
crazy.
yeah, it's a dark storyline.
It is for sure. Yeah.
Hey, Christopher Lawson Palmer, can you put on your camera and unmute yourself? I have a question for you. Can I
Oh,
do that?
yes, I can. I apologize.
Hey, everyone. Christopher is the first James Calloway Jazz Scholarship recipient. And one thing, he's going to be playing on our Rising Star concert next month that will be on the YouTube channel. But that's not why I had you unmute yourself, Christopher. You recently, I think fairly recently, scored a film. Tell us about that.
So I haven't scored it just yet. They haven't sent me the scenes, but
Okay.
I did get a contract to score a film. what I recently been creating compositions. One composition that I possibly will play for the performance is called "A Day and a Half Ago." I wanted to use this composition also in the piece along with a few others to prepare. I mostly listen to just certain movies that make the music like certain great movies that creates that the music propels the story, what makes it a hit, what makes it work for the certain scenes. But I have not gotten the scenes just yet to
Okay.
display.
How did you connect with the director?
The director, I knew him from Facebook, and he was he was sorry. I apologize, my phone fell. So I knew the director from Facebook, and he was advertising his film, and was looking for someone to create the music for his film.
Okay.
And I sent him my resume and stuff I've done, and he looked further into it. And so about a few days went by, and I sent him a few more things, and he said he would love to have me um, create for his film. And later on, he said he sent me the script and said he would send me the scenes of the film when they're done editing. Right
Great.
now, they're done filming, and right now they're almost done editing the film.
Is
It usually takes a while to edit, as you know.
Yeah, is it a short film or full length?
It's a full length. I
Okay.
also got someone wants to use my composition for a short film. I won't be scoring for that film, but I will be handing them my original. So
Right.
technically, they're just buying my original.
Okay. That's great. That's really great. Do you think you're going to do an original next month as one of your 3 songs?
Yes, I said I will most likely do A Day and a Half Ago, which is a really good
Okay.
original.
Okay. And I am going to ask all to unmute. The next concert this Thursday at 7:30. I don't know if any of you have heard of this guy. Mike Finkel will be performing. And it's called Music of My Velcro Mind because I listen to such a wide range of stuff. Different music goes up there, and things that shouldn't go get together get stuck together. So we're playing songs you might know in different ways than you generally heard them, combining different songs and some originals. And I've got Ginny Mac playing accordion and singing on a few songs. Nathan Phelps is playing upright bass, electric bass, and synth bass. And Jackie Whitmill on drums. And that'll be on the YouTube channel. And let me share this to make it easier. And it's a free concert Thursday night. If you go, oh, did my text go away from earlier? It didn't keep it? No, it did not keep it. But if you go to youtube.com/C/Dallas Jazz Piano Society or search Dallas Jazz Piano Society on YouTube, you'll find it, and it'll just be on YouTube Live on our page Thursday at 7:30. I know several of you joined that. But does anyone want to share some of their favorite music from films or talk about that? Steve?
There's a film that I watched from 1947. It's called New Orleans, and Louis Armstrong and Nat King Cole are in it. I noticed that Louis Armstrong was playing his original. Well, I won't say his original, but he was playing West End blues, and he was starred also in it playing it in the scene. I'm not sure if you've seen that scene, but have you seen the scene?
I think it's
West
been
End
a
Blues?
long time, yeah. But I have. Louis was in a lot of films there for
He
a
was.
while.
Yeah. the original Philadelphia Story too. The one that Philadelphia Story was the remake of.
Yeah.
He was the head of the jazz musician group there too.
And then
And
all the way up to Mame. Mame had to
wait,
be one of the later films he was in because he
what was the
died.
Danny Kaye movie where they all had um, the Danny Kaye movie where there was all these jazz musicians. It was all like I think Louis Armstrong was in that one too, wasn't he? You know what I'm talking about? What's the movie
Kind
called?
of. Yeah,
Um,
kind of.
I kind of know. I'm not fully sure.
I think like Benny Goodman was in it.
Yeah, I can't remember what that is.
Oh,
Apoku, did you have something?
I did have a question for Chris, if you don't mind.
Oh, of
Christopher,
course.
you seem like a fairly young man. At what age did you start playing music, and at what age did you start writing your own music?
So I so I was a classical musician before I became a full jazz musician. I started classical when I was around 10 years old. And I noticed I was improvising with every piece that I learned, which was not the best thing to do. I always got corrected by my teacher. And later on, my mom introduced me to a concert that was before me where I lived. I saw a young prodigy that was around 12. Well, not 12, she was also 11. And she was performing um, with a band, and I recently saw it and wanted to be a part of it. So I got into the youth orchestra for it. And later on, I started to do master classes with Wynton Marsalis and studied with Donald Brown, who is also a piano player. I learned his composition of Bag Screw, where in the middle he created his own original piece. And I noticed that he did that. And later on, I started scoring for this short film, and my mom told me to spend every day just creating a piece. And I created my first piece around age 11. And then I stopped writing a little bit then, and started more focusing on my jazz. I learned more compositions recently, 2 years ago when I was 12. Um, After that, I recently studied with more people, had more master classes with Arturo Sandoval. And I started playing the trumpet when I hit age 13. I noticed that when I played trumpet, I noticed it was a different skill set than piano. There was a different skill set with practicing, putting more time in, and also just being more dedicated. I noticed I had to switch to piano and trumpet where it was hard balancing both. Now I find it really easy to balance. But back then, I would usually focus on trumpet and my piano would go down. Or I would focus on piano, my trumpet would go up.
Yeah.
Later on, I
Christopher,
started getting more job opportunities into composing. And later on, it featured me landing this composition job. And I started creating more music after.
yeah. Christopher, did you start on voice or piano?
So my mom is an opera singer. She was an opera singer in New Orleans, and she retired. I started singing voice all my life, but when I started, I was age 10 also, and I landed my first opera in a mall and night visitors. And then after that, my mom noticed that I also need to learn piano to also be able to sing. You have to know a little bit of theory in piano to play your notes. So she got me a classical piano teacher, and I started after that.
Okay, that's good.
Um, I have a question for Jeff. Jeff, whenever you're, Jeff and Mike, actually, whenever you're writing scores for movies, when you're playing an instrument manually versus when you're using a computer for electronic, what's the percentage? Do you do 80% is like you playing on your own instrument, 20% computer, or is it computer always? Like, how does that work when it comes to composing music?
I can tell you for myself, when I'm composing music, sometimes I don't even play the instruments that I consider myself my main instruments. You know, so a lot of it is playing instruments that I call them composer's chops. Like I have composer's chops on piano, guitar, violin, stuff like that, but I would never play it live. You know, I mean, it'd have to be a real specific situation where I'd play it live, like a very specific part. I would never play jazz with those instruments live, you know. But sometimes it just may require something that has a more of like an electronic bass sound. So in which case I play an electronic bass. I don't even play bass on it. And there's other times that it just really, for me, it just depends. But the electronic part is such a great tool because you can do all these things that you can't really do, you know, and you can tweak stuff and make it sound great, which is really sort of a catch 22 because as a studio musician 20 years ago I mean studio work was great for musicians. Every day I was working all day long as a studio player, and now there's just not that. It's, being a studio musician is not really something people aspire to anymore because there's just not enough work anymore because
No.
everybody can do that on their computer now. Everybody can you know, tweak stuff and make it sound great, you know, make it sound like a great studio player. So it's like, do I need a great piano player? No, I can do this and just mess with it. You know? How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think it always depends on the film, the scene that you're scoring. Because there's sometimes you have to be, if you're doing what they call cartooning, where you have to be very precise and get things to hit in an exact. You may say, okay, I want this to hit, this phrase to start at 3 seconds and 5 frames.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that playing live, and there's sometimes you just have to put the film on a loop and play different things live to it until you decide what works. So it can go both ways. And it's funny that I've spent most of the past 35 years sitting in a room by myself creating music because my last couple years at North Texas, I swore I was only going to play acoustic piano and straight ahead jazz. And then I started writing for TV my senior year. I would send parts up to the studio in New York, and then one time I was up there for the trip, and I said, well, what time did the guys show up? And they said, well, there's no guy. Here's your engineer. Here's your room. You have this DX7, this Prophet 5, and this Lindrum. Room's yours all day. Make whatever you want in that time. And I had no idea how any of that worked at that time. And now my room looks like this. So.
You know, that actually kind of brings up another interesting point, though, about like movie scores in general, and like how there's all these, you know, like the classical ways of composing scores, and then there's the other side, which is like this total electronic way of composing scores. And now it's really neat, like hearing these composers combine like big bands with total crazy electronic stuff.
Right.
Like what's his J.G. Thirlwell. Are you familiar with that composer, Mike?
I know that name, yeah.
He does a lot of cartoon stuff specifically. A lot of his stuff is sort of focused on, well, it's sort of modeled after like, you know, the old Mission Impossible big band or James Bond big band type compositions. But he combines all this electronic stuff with an actual big band, like a live, you know, recorded big band.
Right.
Crazy. I think there's probably an example of him somewhere in the list.
I remember seeing that. No Vacancy.
But he always uses an orchestra or a big band, and he also pretty much always uses electronics. It's like really noticeably, not like just fixing, not just, you know, electronic instruments, but using like techno stuff with a big band or something like that.
Right. Let me pull up that cut.
Jeff, when you first started learning this, what are these manuals that you guys kind of like learning how to play piano? Like I play classical piano, I have a teacher and I have like books that I learn out of. Are these books that you've read or is this something that you just kind of practice on your own? How do you go about becoming a scorer for TV shows and stuff like that? How do you get that good?
I actually have never done a TV show score. I've played on plenty of them, but I've never written one. Have you, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I did themes and background music for TV for years, though it was
Yeah.
more sports based. And it's
Actually, that's not true. I did write for one TV show, and several video games, if those count as TV shows.
well, you were writing a TV show.
Oh, well, that's true. Okay, I wasn't counting that one. Besides that.
I mean, if you want to go that way, but also you were talking about I'm blanking on Danny.
Danny Kaye?
No, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, Danny Elfman.
Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman started out scoring films. For his first 2 or 3 films, he would just write down melodies on little scraps of paper.
He couldn't read music.
No, and he'd give it to, yeah, or just sing melodies and give that all to Shirley Walker. And Shirley Walker would actually do the orchestration and work out all of that. And without Shirley Walker, Danny Elfman would have been still in Oingo Boingo reunion tours.
Very true. And he still has an orchestrator. It may still be her, but he talks about that, like how he still does, and now he kind of uses it like, I don't have to anymore. I'm famous, It's like,
I thought he had picked up some of that through the years.
Oh, he did. He knows he can do it now. Like what he says is he's fully capable of doing it now, but he still has an orchestrator because like he doesn't want to do all the work.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. He'll write a theme and write some basic ideas and give all these things, but he still has an orchestrator take a lot of the heavy lifting off of what he does.
All right, here's the J.G. Thirlwell.
He's using live strings there. So that one only had a little bit of electronica stuff kind of in the beginning, like the crazy beats and the.
Well, it's in there in the bass, yeah.
Right. But he always combines, full orchestration with a lot of electronics. Like everything I've heard him do is pretty much.
Well, it sounded like Cecil Taylor on piano in the middle of that.
Right.
Well, and some of the best big band writing in recent years is The Incredibles.
Oh yeah, well, very similar. It's a very similar kind of thing, right? Like it's Spy, the big band Spy, James Bond, little stuff. Yeah. Who wrote that actually? Who wrote The Incredibles?
What is Michael? He's from the north. He's from New Jersey. I can't remember his last name, but it's really great writing.
Yeah. Because I love all that stuff anyway, but then to see something new combined with it, is even for me. Oh, by the way, the name of that Danny Kaye movie was A Song Is Born.
Oh,
Song Is Born. It had Lionel Hampton, Louis Armstrong, Benny Goodman, a bunch of a lot of the big band leaders from the time were in that movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry about composers living in a house together.
Who else? Gail, did you have any thoughts on music or film? I don't know Susan. Susan, are you there? Did you have any thoughts?
That's my sister.
The guy's
Oh,
name
that's
is
your.
Michael Giacchino or something like that.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that does The Incredibles. That's him.
Oh yes, yes, the singer. Yeah, he does. He's done a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
has.
yeah. Didn't he do some stuff for David Lynch too at some point, or that's always Angelo Badalamenti? Does he
I
always
think
do?
that's normally Angelo.
Yeah,
Still.
I thought he has done something though. Yeah, his name is pretty common.
Yeah.
I can't believe we haven't talked about the Ennio Morricone yet though. After this whole movie music, I haven't even mentioned him. He just passed
Well,
away too.
yeah. Well, the one I pulled up was Once Upon a Time in the West,
Oh yeah, classic.
because it's just, who would think putting opera and that type of music into a western would work so well. And it's just,
Yep.
and he did so many. He did Latin pieces. He did. What was the one you had pulled up?
All sorts of styles. I don't remember which one I put in there. I don't remember what it was.
I mean, in Cinema Paradiso.
Oh yeah, sure.
Beautiful music.
Yep.
Well, let me see. I can pull up.
I mean, he's like the quintessential spaghetti western composer
Yeah.
for all that stuff. But man, he went so far beyond that. Oh, The Thing. He did The Thing,
Yeah.
which was yeah.
Let me see if they've
He could
had
do
it.
horror movies. He could do lush, beautiful romantic stuff.
And
He
just
was master.
piano.
Yeah. I mean, like people like John Williams. Here's a big difference for me between John Williams and like Ennio Morricone, right? So they're both super famous, very well known film composers. And I love both of them. I mean, I'm certainly not, neither, but they're very different in that Ennio Morricone, like it's almost impossible to figure out who his influences are. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
he's so well rounded, and his stuff is so original, and it's so iconic, right? Whereas John Williams, also very iconic, but you can almost trace everything he wrote back to a
To the
specific.
planets. Almost
Well,
everything. I mean, a lot of what he did, the NBC
crazy.
themes, Star Wars,
I know.
are all in Gustav Holst's The Planets. You get the different parts.
There's another that same group, two set violin. They did a whole video just taking, I think it was just John Williams scores and comparing it to the classical, and some of them, come on,
It's
exactly the same. It's the exact
well,
same.
and some of that, in the case of Star Wars, they put things in there as placeholders and wanted him to do something that sounded like that, and
Yeah,
he
sure.
did.
Yeah, right, exactly like it. Same key and everything. But they'll compare, and it's not all on the planets. Like some of the most famous ones are, but man, there's stuff from a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like in most of his scores, like the big, giant, epic melodies that everybody remembers, they're like, well, let's look and let's see, and then they compare it, and it's like, wow, it's even the same key, and even does the exact same. It's like, oh man, really? But it's still great. You can't take it away from him. I know
So
some of my.
he's like the Billy Joel of film scores.
Oh man.
All right, let me share a little Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, great.
Just one note sitting there. into harmonica.
Yes.
And I used to know exactly how long it was. I don't remember anymore. You can't have anything fast moving and busy in that film because it's got to be like the first 12 to 15 minutes of that film. There's not one word
Right.
of dialogue. It's unbelievable, and it works.
Mhm.
But you go, what? Are they?
Yep.
Is somebody going to talk? What is going on here?
Yeah. So great, man. So great. Great movie too, though. Not just the music.
Yeah, yeah.
Now there are movies that are not so good, but the music is good.
Oh, of course.
Like what's the Last Tango in Paris comes to mind.
That is
Great
a good,
soundtrack.
great song. Yeah.
Music movie. No.
I don't think I've ever seen that film. I've played the song,
Here you go.
know a bit about it. I don't think I've ever watched it.
Yeah, sometimes. But then there's a lot of times if the soundtrack wasn't there, the movie wouldn't be as great as it is.
Right.
Like The Jungle Book, for instance, the Sherman Brothers. Got to mention the Sherman Brothers.
That has some good jazz songs.
It does. Louis Prima, and man, they had all sorts of great guys in that movie. Yeah.
All right, well, we should probably move on. Thanks for joining us. I hope some of you can come in on Thursday for the concert. I see a lot of you join us for a lot of these events. Nothing's changing with our plans at this point. We're going to continue audience-less concerts for a while until we really feel it's safe. I don't think that will change this season because we have my concert, Rising Stars in April, Piano Madness in May, and then we'll start back in September. We'll talk about it over the summer. Maybe in September things will be where we can safely get crowds again, hopefully. I mean, Thursday is the anniversary of March 11th last year when everything changed. I was playing solo piano and I get a notification on my break that Tom Hanks and his wife had contracted COVID. Then I get a notification on the next break that an NBA player had it. Driving home, I hear the NBA is closing down. Then hockey closed down. So March 11th, we're a year away from things starting in the U.S. Getting closer to the end, it looks like. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully you can join us Thursday or in the future. Next month, Jazz Explained is just going to be talking with some of the high school, college jazz directors about rising stars and young jazz players. And then Piano Madness is Stephen Harlow's, Dave Meter, and Dan Cavanaugh, and I'll talk to them on Jazz Explained about jazz piano. So that should be fun too, right before the concert.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Have a good night, and we will see you soon. Jeff, thank you.
Oh yeah, man, my pleasure. Just talking about movies.
I knew
Easy
you'd
for
like
me.
that. All right, I'm going to shut us down here.
All right.